As we launch in tonight, I know we'll have some more people jumping into the call, but I wanted to start off with some of the results from the pre-session survey that I sent out. If you didn't get a chance to fill that out, that's no worries at all. But I wanted to just give you a little snapshot of who is in the room with us tonight, who's in the Zoom room digitally. One of the questions I asked was, what stage are you at in your entrepreneurship journey? The biggest majority of you all have either just started, you're in this like 6 months to a year time slot, or under that, maybe you haven't started at all, or you're in the first 6 months of your journey. A couple of you have been in this for a year or more, and a few of you have also been in the entrepreneurial world for about 3 to 5 years. Another question I asked was what type of business you are looking to launch or continue building. The two biggest results were coaching, some form of either fitness coaching or business coaching or personal coaching, life coaching, or creative. Those were the two biggest sectors. But there were a variety of other sectors as well. Some people were interested in nonprofit or ministry. One person wrote a children's playhouse, which sounds really awesome. I'd be curious to hear more about what that is. And most of you are sole proprietors. 93% of respondents to the pre-session survey are only doing this by yourself, which is incredible. I think we only had one or two people who responded and said that they have employees, and I think it was only one. So the majority of people on the call tonight or who signed up for the call are in it by themselves or with a small number of staff members. One of the other things that I asked was to project your net income for this business that you started for the year for 2022. So this was an interesting figure that of those who responded, 42% were in the 0 to 20,000 range, but 42% were also in the zero range. So 84% of people who responded are earning or netting under $20,000 in their current enterprise, which I thought is awesome. It sounds like a lot of people are in this launching phase. We had, I'm trying to think, it was about 10%, I guess, of respondents who are in the $20,000 to $50,000 range. I think we had one person respond in the 50 to 70. So 100% of the people on this call tonight are bringing in 70,000 or less in their project or in their business, and 80% of those people are in the 20,000 or less category. So I love sharing that information because it's helpful sometimes to know where you're at in the mix with your business. So I hope that's encouraging to you all, that we're all kind of in this process together. Well, I want to thank you again if you're just joining in for joining me tonight. Cecily and I have a passion for sharing our journey to help others. We launched our creative company back in 2012. Cecily Breeden Creative is what we called it, providing photography, web design, graphic design for clients here in Los Angeles, but also clients around the world as well. And what we're going to talk about tonight is basically how we built that business, and hopefully share some details that are applicable to you as you build your own business. The goal tonight is that we're sharing some data from our journey, but also creating time for you to ask questions or engage with me or with each other about your own questions that you have. We know that launching a business is tough. It is a difficult world for entrepreneurs out there. But we also believe that we are better together, that a high tide raises all ships. And so we want to share some of our story to hopefully support your growth and elevate your story as well. Cecily and I have been a team in this project from day one. I always say that Cecily kind of frames the shot and pulls the trigger, and I'm always behind the scenes, kind of managing the business side of what we do. I do a lot of work on thinking through and setting prices and thinking about marketing or thinking about growing our business. But we regularly say that It has been collaborative from the beginning, and we couldn't have done it without the other person. So even though she is the photographer, we've had a great partnership in business from the beginning of this. Just to give you a little bit of our journey, and I'm using our financial journey here to kind of frame what we'll talk about in a moment, just because I think it's reflective of the fact that everyone here is desiring to build a business that is probably a passion project, but also pays them. That at the end of the day, you're earning a salary. So I want to share some of our financial figures with you. Cecily had her first paid client back in 2012. And the client was actually our next door neighbor, David Soper, if you're familiar with the Pepperdine community. It was a senior photo shoot, and the Sopers paid $90 for the senior photos. This was like her first, like, oh, I can make money selling my photos and doing photography. So it wasn't until about a year later that she really saw this as a viable business, and in our conversations, we decided that she wanted to really dive into this. And so we made the decision in the fall of 2013 to officially launch Cecily Breeding Creative. Cecily quit the part-time job that she had at that point to be able to fully focus on this. So her first full year in business was 2014. And at the end of that year, we really didn't think the business was viable. I remember a conversation that she and I had where she was saying, like, I made more money selling yoga pants at Lululemon than I have made as a photographer and small business owner. But I encouraged her, and through our conversations, we felt like she should keep going and keep trying to build this. And really, in 2015, she found some momentum. That momentum continued to build over the next couple of years, and she broke the six-figure mark in her income for the first time in 2018. And a major cause for this in 2018 was that her wedding photography basically doubled in that year as her client base grew. And weddings are one of her highest paid kind of offerings that we do with her photography. So fast forwarding just a little bit, COVID hit our business and probably you all's world pretty hard. But the year after COVID was our best year ever, best year yet. We, through this work, netted around $150,000. And in this year, in 2022, if the year ended today, this would be her second best year ever. So it's been a nice build with a little bit of a slow start. Some of those early years were difficult for sure. But I want to share these numbers with you because I think it can be helpful to hear the ups and downs of one company. We almost didn't do this after 2014 when that was such a low year and kind of a disappointing financial year. We weren't sure that this would actually be a viable business, but we stuck it out and have grown from there. And I want to say that our results might not be typical. I don't know, but I do know that they're possible, right? And I think that's important for any business owner to hear, is that there is the possibility of building a company or building a business from your kitchen table that results in a six-figure income. And I know that because we've been on that journey. There might be people out there who are doing it faster, or maybe have better knowledge or information to share. I don't know. I hope that you're engaging with them as well, but we're just one example, and we wanted to share kind of our story with you. So that's kind of a brief overview of our financial journey, but I want to share three quick principles with you before we dialogue a little bit about this, so that it's not just me monologuing with details of our journey. The first principle from our journey is that you can't build it alone. You can't build your business alone. Our first clients were our friends. They were our church members. They were our neighbors, and they paid us poorly. Right? Cecily was building her skill set. She was kind of honing what she was gifted at. And so our first people who paid us were people that we knew, and they paid us kind of an entry level pay for what we were offering. But our second clients were the friends of our friends. So the friends that we had done photography for or built websites for, they told their friends. And those friends paid us a little bit better. We were able to increase our rates a little bit. But those two kind of segments of clientele were our only clients for the first several years, either friends that we knew personally or friends of our friends that we had a personal connection with. And I would say that we started earning more money once we broke through that next layer. So essentially, our friends' friends' friends and then total strangers. So people that we didn't know that connected to us either online or through some other format than just being our friends. And those are the people who started paying us, or we started charging a price that allowed us to create a sustainable or viable business. But I just want to say that community has been a critical component to launching and building our business. And kind of throughout this journey, one of the principles or concepts that we used within this idea of community was this idea of give, 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 ask. And so for every project that Cecily did, she was also giving away numerous projects or free services to help build a clientele and build the base. And they weren't always big projects. She wasn't giving away free weddings necessarily, but she would do things like poster design for local churches, or some maybe sometimes some mini headshots for a friend or a neighbor. And that's something that we still do to this day. We try to follow that give, 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 ask concept, that we are giving more than we are asking. And that's been something that I think has been critical to our journey, kind of building generosity into our business model. I think that has helped build clients and has also helped us be able to hit some of the financial goals that we have. So I start by saying, like, we didn't build this alone. It was built through our network and through our connections. The second principle that we have learned over the years is that a penny saved is a penny earned. And I'm sure your mom or your grandmother or your grandpa probably said that to you. And so it's not new wisdom, but it is true wisdom. One of the things that I love about Cecily is that she hates spending money. Cecily made her first almost $200,000 on a camera that she paid about $1,000 for. She has avoided expensive upgrades. She has avoided spending a ton on gear. There have been numerous weddings that she has shot where attendees at the wedding have nicer cameras and more expensive setups than she has, but she's the one who's getting the paycheck at the end of the day. Cecily wore the same outfit to these weddings. Like, she doesn't buy a new, outfit every time. She's still wearing literally the same, like, onesie, photography onesie, she calls it. She's still wearing that like 10 years later. That is her style of being tight on expenses. And I think too often entrepreneurs or business owners get caught up trying to make people think they're good at what they do rather than actually being good at it. And a lot of times we get sucked into expenses that limit our income by trying to put off a vibe or the belief that we are bigger than we are. We started this business and have built a six-figure income from our dinner table. Basically, we don't have office space. We have very limited expenses, and that has been a part of our model. Now, your industry might be a little bit different, and so the question I would have for you is, how do you avoid the trap of having the nicest stuff or the most expensive things that just drain your income? So that's something to think about. Last principle that I wanted to share today is this concept that I call grind, celebrate, and then scale. Cecily is my duck on a pond, as I say. She works so hard, and most people never see it because a lot of it's behind the scenes. As I said earlier, she does a lot of this give, 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 ask concept. So she's doing lots of free work on top of the work that she charges for. Over the last 10 years, she spent a lot of time on YouTube, learning new skills and developing her craft. She's always talking with community members and going to informal networking events to share about what she does and get to know others. She is someone who works really hard. And so I would say a principle to our journey and our success has been just our willingness to work really hard to build this. We also say that it's super important to celebrate. Most companies or businesses have bonuses or things that they give employees after they hit certain metrics. But when you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner, no one is going to celebrate you if you don't. And so early on, we started doing things like setting income goals for the year and then buying a nice bottle of champagne to celebrate when we hit that, whenever that is in the year. We also do staff retreats, which are essentially family vacations with the two of us, where we will go on a trip for a weekend and talk about business. So those are ways that we have found to find joy in the work that we've done. Last little note on this is that we always say what you measure grows. And so everyone should be tracking not only their income and expenses, but also their goals, like the things that you hope to achieve so that you can celebrate them. And then this last little component to this is scaling, which I know is probably of interest to a lot of people, because that's the idea of building your business. So I think there are two things that we learned that have been really important to us in this idea of growth and of scaling. And it's that there are two elements or two important things that you have or that you can do when you are scaling. And the first one is just time invested, just time working on your business. For the first 4 years that Cecily was in business, she could have earned more money working at McDonald's. Nothing wrong with working at McDonald's, but that pay that she would have earned as an hourly McDonald's worker was more than she earned as a business owner. So she had to stick out or make it through those early years of not earning a ton of money. So it took 4 years basically before we felt like she was bringing in an income that was beyond what she could have found somewhere else. And then the second part of this is getting people to talk about your work. This is the idea that that word of mouth networking and marketing is the most important thing that you can do. Oh, the way that we did this was through Google reviews and asking clients to tell other clients about our work or about Cecily's photography or design. Google reviews allowed us to populate at the top of search lists when people would Google for photographers or design, anything like that. And so that would be something that I would ask you. What does that look like for you? What would it look like for your business to get people talking about what you do? All right, so I want to pause there. I know that was a little bit of a blur, but I wanted to be mindful of your time. I wanted to open it up for some questions and some dialogue and conversation. So as I've shared those concepts, what comes up for you? What stands out as something you would like to know more about or want to discuss a bit more? Yeah, Russell, go ahead. You raise your hand.
Yeah, so I've got a question about how do you decide what to use as your metrics, as far as, I know there's like Google Analytics and different ways to kind of track some of that stuff. So what were some things you were looking for in those types of equipment and stuff?
Tell me what you mean as far as like metrics of like tracking income or tracking clients or customers, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so the word of mouth stuff and just seeing what interest has been generated, maybe trying to drive traffic to Cecily's business. And essentially, I mean, you went over word of mouth with friends and things, but was there anything in addition to that to kind of get more out there, I guess?
Yeah, it's a good question. We did very little formal like analytics of marketing practices. Almost everything that we did was client word of mouth, and encouraging people to tell their friends to do shoots. Like I said before, that give, ask. So we were doing lots of free stuff. Cecily was doing lots of free web design and free projects. And then asking those clients to share that work with other people and saying, let your friends know that we'd love to do their family photos after we would do a free shoot with someone. So we've never done like the Google Analytics. I think one time we paid for Facebook ads and it was kind of a bust. And I think we paid like $150 and I don't think we got a single client from that. One time we did a mailer. Actually, we did like we used direct mail and we did like a postcard and sent it out. We think we spent $500 and sent it to something like 4,000 addresses. And we got one client from that.
Jeez. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, totally. Who else? I think Matt Soper, I think I saw you jump on.
Yeah. Hey, Dusty. Thank you so much. Thanks for being so transparent. This is really great.
Oh, thanks.
it's helpful and sobering to see the first 4 or 5 years of Cecily's income. Now, I guess it helps to have a spouse who has a full-time job.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah, because I've heard that if you're getting started, you don't want to, you'll come off as desperate
Yeah.
if you don't have a job to sort of backstop you a little.
Yeah, I think that's a great assessment. I think that's 100% true. And I would go about that two different ways. I think having a spouse who provides the insurance benefits and things like that can really help you be free to grow your business. If you are, if you could imagine if it was just Cecily and she was attempting to do this by herself for the first 4 years, she could not feed herself off of the income that she was bringing in, or at least couldn't feed herself and pay the bills or pay rent or whatever. So yeah, I think that's big. I think for someone who doesn't have a spouse, I think the idea of this being a side hustle until it is safe to be your full-time thing, right? And I think that's really important. I'm going to talk about some of my book recommendations in a moment. But one of my favorite books is a book called Quitter, and chapter 1 of Quitter is don't quit. And the idea is, as you're building your side hustle, as you're building your dream, you can't quit your stable job too soon, or all of a sudden everything falls apart because you don't have insurance, you can't pay your bills, you've got all these expenses that you were using your full-time career to kind of keep you afloat. So I think that's an important concept. I think it'll take longer when you do that for sure, but it'll be safer and more sustainable.
Thank you.
Other thoughts, questions? I wanted to share, there were a couple questions that were a part of the survey that I can hit here. Let's see. I think one of the questions that came out that I think is really important is, how do you overcome the fear of putting yourself out there and getting over thinking what other people think about starting a small business? I think that's a great question. There is some fear and some hesitancy, and there's some ego involved, right? When you start something new, it's not going to be crushing it in year one, and it doesn't make you feel awesome if you're sharing the Instagram that, like Cecily's first year of business, I think she made whatever that figure was, $2,000. Like that's not anything that the world would see as being successful. But I think part of this is reassessing your goals and your why behind doing this, and recognizing that for a lot of people, these are passion projects, or they're things that are going to help you find the financial freedom that you want. And so when you are motivated by that, when you have a big motivator, it can replace or overcome the fear of sharing what you're doing. Lance, I think you had a question.
Yes. I had a question, one of just practical in terms of bookkeeping tools, several out there, a lot of go-tos. Some people have good experiences with them, bad experience. I'd be interested to hear what you all have to say about that. And anybody, actually, if anybody has other experience. And then I'm sorry for the compound question, but my second question is pricing. You talked about the entry points and just the getting toward liftoff. Maybe you're just pushing down the runway still.
Yep.
And I understand the lower price on that from this close points of connection and such, but any advice on pricing your services?
Yeah, that's a great question. Remind me again your first question real quick, and then I'll hit the second one.
My first question was any bookkeeping tools?
Oh yeah. So we have always operated with an Excel spreadsheet and a good accountant. So that we've gone super basic. So income and expenses, just a basic Excel spreadsheet, and then we regularly connect with our accountant to make sure that's all dialed in. I'd be curious in the chat if anyone wants to drop in, if anyone has done QuickBooks or anything more complex than that. Cecily's work is relatively simple in that she's not creating products or anything like that per se. So that might be why the Excel works really well for us. Regarding the pricing, I think that is an awesome question. The way that we have managed this is a couple different ways. we know, well, first of all, we do a little bit of market research to kind of find the what we would call like a set price. So kind of assessing what people in our area are charging, what we asked friends early on who had websites, like how much did you pay your website builder, to kind of find a base rate. And then basically what we've done over the last 10 years or so is if no one tells us that we're charging too much, we've raised our rates. So at the end of every year, if we're going through the year and not a single person has said we can't afford you, we've increased our rates. There have been some years where we've started to bump up against that. You'll get some people saying like, oh, thanks so much, but we can't afford that, or that's a little out of our price point. And that's when we're like, okay, that might be a good price point. So as inflation changes and as the economy changes, that's been one way that we've navigated our price point. And it's also been part of, as Cecily's skill set has grown, the value of her work has grown as well. When you hire a photographer who's never shot a wedding before, you say, this is my first wedding, you can't charge what she can now charge 10 years later. And so also just being respectful of your presence in the market in that regard, your skill set. Let's see. Looking through the chat. Oh, Naomi says you work with QuickBooks at your day job, definitely easy to use. Oh, cool. Yeah, we've never done QuickBooks, so that's good to know. Yeah, Naomi.
Yeah, so this is just kind of a follow-up question about the pricing. Because I feel like with photography, it's really easy to compare to what the market rate is.
Yeah.
It's really easy to find information on services like that. But how do you go about, like, in those conversations with people who are saying, this is a little bit too expensive, like I don't quite see the value in
Yeah.
what you're the pricing that you're setting. How do you talk to those people? Because I know for me, like what I'm doing is so niche that people don't really know what it's worth or what to expect when it comes to pricing, and so they see the cost of it, and I think they get a little bit of sticker shock. So how do you go about having that conversation with people who might actually have the ability to pay it, but they don't agree with you on sort of the price range that you've set?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. My first response is that the price of anything is the amount someone's willing to pay for it, right? So if no one is willing to pay the price that you're asking, it's probably going to be a very difficult product to sell or to get off the ground. I think of some artists who create masterpieces of art and then want $1 million for it, but I look at it, I'm like, I don't really want that art, so I wouldn't be a good client for that person. So that would be my first kind of thought is, will the market bear your price point? And if no one is willing to pay it that you've interacted with, is there another market for that price point? Is there another market out of state, or is there another market online? I think going the route of education is important. You can educate your client as to why this price point is what it is. You can talk about other competitors' prices, but if it's beyond what they are comfortable paying, it's going to be really difficult to sell that product. Something we have seen with Cecily's work, when we've had clients who will ask her price for a wedding shoot or a photography gig. And they'll say, oh, thanks, that might be a little much. And then they go and interact with other photographers who are charging as much or more, but their product isn't as good. They'll come back and say, actually, I checked around and I do want to move forward with you. So sometimes if it's early on in the process, they might need to do a little more research on their own. But I guess at the end of the day, it's, are you making the money that you need to make? And if not, how can you adjust your price or work on finding new clientele? That's my initial thoughts. Abby asked a question. She said, I've got sleeping babies right beside me. I love it. What are your thoughts on reaching out to friends and family for financial assistance starting out? It's an interesting question. I think my personal response is I'm really hesitant to take money from anyone, especially family. We have done our journey of business debt free. But at the same time, Cecily only needed a camera and a laptop, so it wasn't a business that had required a ton of capital. But our recommendation for any business is to start small and grow and scale in time, rather than taking on the stress of debt or the stress of having an investor, whether it be family or friends, involved. I think anytime money between family gets exchanged, it can become really complex really quickly. So I would be super hesitant about that. All right, we're 32 minutes into our time together. I'm gonna let you disconnect if you want to bounce or head out. I'll hang out for the next few moments. If anyone has any other questions or just wants to chat on their own, or would love to talk more. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm gonna send you my book recommendations. So if you need to take off, I'll send you some photos of books that are my favorite to check out. And then would love to talk with you more if you have further questions. Thanks so much for hanging out with me this evening.
Thank you, Dusty, so much.
Lance, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Good to see you.
Great to see you, my friend. Great to see you. Yeah, I was hoping that we could